Hello and welcome to episode number 4 in the Program Debugging Series. Today we're going to be looking at kind of a neat program. It was left in the lesson 17.1 comment section, and 17.1 dealt with a lot of ifs and elifs and kind of got prepared, get everyone prepared for the challenge program number 4. So the code we're going to be looking at today isn't necessarily based exclusively off the 17.1 challenge program, but it is no doubt an interesting program. If you can imagine a text adventure where a user is maybe fighting a series of different monsters, the game would keep track of experience and things like that. Well, the question that was asked was how to accomplish that without using global variables. As we know, when you use functions, everything becomes a local variable. So keeping track of things like experience can sometimes be a little bit tricky, and no doubt it is. Now, more advanced programmers, or as you advance in Python, you'll find that this is pretty easy to do using classes, but we're not to the point where we can use classes yet, and quite honestly, if you can't do this in a user-defined function, it would be difficult to understand classes anyway. So let's go ahead and pull up that code and take a look at how to get rid of the global variables that are found in the program that we're looking at. Okay, so sitting in front of me here, I have the code that was posted to the lesson 17.1. And just like all the other programs, the first thing that I like to do is just run it and see if it's working. So let's go ahead and hit F5 to run this. And I'm going to save this as the lesson, or as a program debugging 4.py. So we've got this saved now. And the first thing I notice, I'm getting a syntax error here. And that's because this if has been capitalized. I need to have a lowercase if here. Hit F5 again, run this, and see that I'm getting an error right here, an unexpected indent error. That's because this return statement isn't in line with this if statement, this print statement. So we're going to fix this simply by making sure that after the if statement, our next lines are indented 4 spaces and then in line with one another. And I see the program is working correctly now, or at least running. So if I hit A to attack, I can see I'm getting a random is not defined error. And that's because this random.randint is being called, but I didn't have an import random at the top of my program. So we'll run this now and see what the result is. Let's see. It looks like it's running okay now. I did 6 damage. I missed. I did 2 damage. Let's try and run away. And I'm noticing running away isn't working correctly right now. But if I keep attacking, I've managed to kill the monster. So all the real critical bugs have been worked out of this program. It's certainly not in full running form, but at least it's running through without giving me some sort of syntax or name error or any sort of program-breaking bug. A couple things that I'm going to have to address here is that the runaway command is not working right now, and that's one of the last things we'll do. We'll make sure that we can get the attack running correctly. And then the question wasn't necessarily about debugging this program so much as it was about trying to get rid of the global variables that are used in this program right now. In looking at this program initially, I can see there's 3 variables that are established as global variables, are always present. MHP, which is equal to the amount of hit points a monster has. EXP, which is equal to the amount of experience points that the user has. And this BK variable, which says it's used in a loop, and I can see it down here, so that's probably stands for break. Not really certain about that, but those are the variables that we're using in this program. When we define this function, the first thing that happens is MHP and EXP are imported as global variables. And while that certainly works, it's a tool that you have available to you, most programmers really cringe at the idea of using global variables. Way back when we did local versus global variables in the Python tutorial series, said most of the time you're trying your best to make these functions not use any sort of global variables and to return only one value. So we need to get rid of this somehow. And then looking in the rest of the loop here, I can see this loop asks the user whether they want to attack or run, and if they choose attack, it randomly picks a number between 1 and 51, and if that number is less than 40, so the numbers 1 through 39, we have a hit landed, and it prints you hit. It does damage between 1 and 7. It prints the amount of damage that you've done, and then it subtracts from the monster's hit points the amount of damage that was done, and gives the user 2 experience for hitting the monster. Then another check is done. If the monster's hit points drop below 0, the monster is dead. The message, "You killed it," is printed, and this function returns the monster's hit points and the experience gained together. Otherwise, they print "You have missed," meaning that the random number was between 40 and 51. And then we have another if check down here for "You run away." Just running through that program right now, I can see where one of the bugs is, and this might just be a side effect of copying and pasting from YouTube, but this check right here should be in line back here. Because what was happening with the current state of that if statement is if the user picked A for attack, it would run through this list right here, and if the user missed, it would then check to see if they had chosen to run. If they choose to run, then I don't want any of this attacking function to run. I only want them to run away, and if that happens down here, if the user types in R for run away, back at this input statement, I should now adequately get to this "you run away" function. So let's test that out real quick to see if maybe we just fix the run away portion of this user-defined function. Hit R to run away. And at least now our user is able to run away. And if you run away, this is returning nothing. So that's how I'm going to start debugging this program, and that's a rundown of the logic behind how this program is running right now. To get rid of this global command, I'm going to need to, rather than import these as global variables, I want to pass in the information that I need in order for this attack function to work. Well, what I need to know is how many hit points does the monster have? In this case, that's stored in the variable MHP, which is also up here. Rather than use the global version of MHP, I'm going to pass in MHP here at the time I call this function. Then I'm going to erase the call to a global variable. I know I just erased the experience variable, but we will definitely get that in there here in a moment. Now, simply adding MHP isn't going to do any good. In fact, it's going to cause an error. That's because now when I go to run this program, I'm going to get the type error because this function is now looking for one argument, and I'm passing in 0 at the time I call it. So when I make this attack function call, I need to provide a hit point value, and I'm going to do that by adding in this argument here to my attack function call. So if I run this now, it looks like it's running okay. I miss, and now I'm getting an unbound local error experience referenced before assignment. The reason this error is occurring is because I'm adding 2 to an experience value, but since that's no longer a global variable, this function isn't accessing this experience value up here. To correct this problem, I'm going to initialize the variable exp to 0 every time the user attacks a monster. Now, it is possible that the user comes into a fight with, say, 30 experience or 1,000 experience, but this function right here, the way I'm going to write it, will only calculate how much experience the user got for that one particular fight. We'll later add that to any other fights that they've had. So when a user enters combat, they'll always have gained 0 experience for that combat at the beginning. Then, every time they successfully hit the monster, they'll get 2 experience points for that fight and get a final experience value for that fight at the end. Now that we've initialized this experience variable, which is a local variable different from this, to 0, let's see if the program is running correctly now. So let's attack, 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 miss. We do 7 damage, and we've managed to kill the monster. Now, as it stands right now, this program isn't giving me a whole lot of information about what's going on in the background. To fix that, I'm going to add a print statement here that says you gained %s experience for this fight. And that's going to be equal to the experience that I gained from this fight. So let's try that again and see if that's helped our program out. Attack, attack, attack. And there it is. We gained 6 experience for this fight, which is correct because we hit the monster 3 times. Now here's where I run into a fairly big problem with this program. Ideally, your return statements are only going to return 1 bit of information. This return statement right here is actually returning 2 bits of information. After the user defeats the monster, it's set to return how many hit points the monster has when it died, and how much experience the user got. Now, this variable right here is correct now because we've initialized the experience to 0 and then we've incremented it correctly. So this number right here will correctly tell us how many experience points the user gained, but it's also being returned with the monster's hit points. Now let me show you an example of what I'm talking about here, because that might not have made a whole lot of sense. Instead of just running this function, I'm going to set this function equal to a variable for now just called test. With that being added, let's fight a monster and see that we got 10 experience for that fight. When I run test, or when I check the value of test, I get 2 bits of information. Monster hit points, which was at -4 when the fight was over, and the amount of experience I gained during this fight, which was equal to 10. You'll notice that this variable test is in parentheses. Now, it's something we haven't covered in the Python tutorial series yet, but this is what's known as a tuple. Some people will refer to it as a tuple, but it's essentially multiple bits of information kind of stored as one. Python interprets this as one single bit of information, but there's 2 pieces of information in there. This is caused by a return statement that returns more than one number. Inherently, a return statement can only return 1 bit of information in Python. When it's told to return 2 bits of information, it kind of smushes them together into a tuple. Now, I'd like to only return 1 bit of information. And luckily, I'm in a position where I don't need monster hit points. I can assume that after a monster is killed, combat is over, and combat is over for one of 2 reasons. I either run away, and the monster no longer worries me, or I've killed the monster and the monster's dead. Either way, the amount of hit points it had isn't really relevant anymore. If it died, I know it was below 0, and if I ran away, I don't care how many hit points it had. Because of this, I'm not going to return monster hit point anymore. I'm going to return 1 single bit of information, and that's going to be the local variable experience. The local variable experience will be equal to how much experience I got for that one particular fight. In running this program again, let's attack several times. And I killed the monster, gaining 14 experience for that particular fight. Now, if I check the value of test, I see test is equal to the integer value 14. Now this function properly returns how much experience I've gotten for a single fight. Knowing that, I can now get rid of this test variable and replace it with exp. Because this is not part of my user-defined function, this call to exp is the same variable as this guy up here. This is the global version of the experience variable. I want to increment experience by the amount of experience the user got for that one fight. So I'm going to do that by saying experience plus equals the attack function. This is really the same thing as this up here, where in the default code, or in the original code, it says experience is equal to experience plus 2. This is the equivalent of saying experience is equal to experience plus the value of the attack function. And the attack function will always return how much experience points we got for this particular fight. Now, to show you an example of this, let's print you have a total of %s experience. And this will call the global experience variable. Then we're going to print a break, and I'm just going to use a bunch of stars here. And this is just going to be a visual representation for me right now to know when one fight is over. And then I'm going to call this exact same combo of functions again. Normally we'd do this in a loop, but for this example it'll work fine. So the first time through, experience will be equal to 0, and we'll add to it however many experience points the user got for that fight. Then they'll fight another monster, and this time, let's say it's a smaller monster. Instead of having 15 hit points, this guy only has 7 hit points. So I'm going to call the attack function and say this time, I want the monster to have 7 hit points instead of 15. When that fight is over, I want you to tell me how many experience points I got for fighting the 7 hit point monster and add it to the amount of experience points that I already gained. When I run this function now, I hit attack, 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 and that's the end of fight number 1. We hit the monster 1, 2, 3, 4 times and got 8 experience for this fight, giving us a total of 8 experience. We then print the break here so that we have a visual representation of the next fight, and the next fight I've got a monster that has 7 total hit points. I'm going to attack him. I managed to do 2 hits. That got me 4 experience. That 4 was added to the 8 that I had received earlier, and I have a total of 12 experience points now. By doing that little change right there, by only returning one information, I have made this attack function completely self-sufficient. It is there for the sole purpose of handling one fight at one particular time, and it doesn't care how many fights the user has had. By doing so, I can really, at the time I run this attack function, say how many hit points the creature has, and I might even add something to this, like let's say, we'll call it name. And so now this attack function is going to look for the name of the creature, and I'll add this down here to our function calls. So the first monster the user fights is an orc, and the second thing that the monster fight is maybe like a crab. Then at the beginning, I can print, we'll only print it once, and we'll print, you have encountered a %s, and that's going to be equal to the name of the monster that we passed in. Oops, I think I did that wrong. Yep, I got an extra quotation mark in there. When I run this now, I can see I've encountered an orc, which was passed in at runtime. I'm going to attack the orc until I kill it. I got a total of 8 experience for that fight, and now I've encountered a crab because that's what I passed in for the variable or the parameter name. So my argument was crab, and now the next time this attack function is run, it has the name set equal to crab instead of orc. So we'll go ahead and kill this crab. We've killed it in one shot. We gained 2 experience for that fight, and of course 8 plus 2 is our 10 experience points. So let's go ahead and try running from the crab. So we're going to attack the orc until we've killed it. We got our 8 experience points. Now we got the crab, and we're a little beat up, so let's go ahead and run. I'm getting a type error here. This is a pretty bad error because I can't run. In fact, let's go ahead and try this running from the orc. I'm getting a bug here. I need to figure out what is it that's causing this bug. Well, I'm getting an unsupported operand type for int and none. What this is doing is when I tell the computer program that I want to run, it's returning a value, but it's returning none. And I can't add none to a number. Now, none is different than 0. None is a data type in of itself. To fix this error, I'm going to return 0 if the user runs away. In other words, I don't care how many times the user has hit the monster. if they choose to run away, they will always receive 0 experience points. So if I try this again, I'll hit the orc a couple of times. So I do 1 damage, I do 5 damage. Now I get in my head I need to run away. And it tells me I run away, and I got a total of 0 experience points. If I decide to go ahead and finish off the crab, I get 4 experience for the crab, and 4 plus 0 equals 4. So for me, that's how I would handle completing this program without using global variables. You can see we took those out of this function and made this function completely revolve around returning the amount of experience the user got for each individual attack. As another side note that I would add to this program, though it won't really affect the running of the program, for this user-defined function, I would use a lowercase a instead of an uppercase a. And the reason for that is, in typical Python programming conventions, you will capitalize the first letter of a class, and a function should be all lowercase. So while it won't really affect the program at all, it's a good programming convention not to capitalize the first letter of a function or a variable unless you're making a class, which of course we haven't gotten to yet. So hopefully that explains a little bit more about how to do this without global variables. Of course, you can expand this now and pass in values for like an adventurer's name or how much gold they have or all kinds of stuff like that. But this will get you out of using the global variables for the program that was posted to the comments. And that's pretty much going to wrap it up for the Python Debugging Series, episode number 4. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that you learned something from it. As always, if you have any questions, if there's anything that I can do to help you out or make you a better programmer, let me know and I will be happy to assist you. Thank you so much for all of your support and for supporting the Python and Alice tutorial series. Look forward to the next video and have a great day.